Jay! Hey man, I gotta talk to you. Something weird's going on.
You have no memory of the last 2 weeks, including making an episode of your show?
Last thing I remember, I was doing an episode on the Incredible Hulk. Next thing I know, I wake up in bed, have no memory of the last 2 weeks, with a flash drive in one hand and a note that says "Watch me" in the other.
Then I guess I'll just have to keep trying and make it crack. Doesn't matter to me, I have plenty of time. After all, you can't get rid of me.
Anything changed, or is it still the same monitor?
Shut up.
Ooh, feisty. If you think simply telling me to shut up is going to work, you're dumber than I thought.
Shut up, shut up, shut up!
No, 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 and no. I told you, if you want it gone so bad, you know what has to be done. Alright, you know what? I'll entertain you, if only to get a question of mine answered. You're supposed to be the dark side of me, right? Like some sort of bad juju that's been left uncorked, right? Right. Okay. So then why are you so hell-bent on getting me to kill myself? If you're a part of me, won't that kill you too? Well, aren't we astute? Yes, you killing yourself would kill me too. And I have to admit, I'm not too big of a fan of the idea. So then why even suggest it? I'm evil, Stephen. Getting you to kill yourself is the exact sort of thing I would do, if it does cause me problems. Of course, there is another option.
What?
So glad you asked. Alright, Steve, you've got 2 choices. Choice number 1, you kill yourself. You'll be at peace, I'll be gone, and the world will generally be a better place for you not having to exist anymore. Choice number 2 is you let me take over. Submit your mind and body to me, and you will never have to deal with the harsh realities of this world and its horrors ever again. I'll take care of everything. So, my choices are either to die, or to let some evil, twisted version of me run around and do God knows what. Either way, you won't be in pain anymore. Isn't that what's important? I have a show to do. Ah, yes, your pathetic little dog and pony show that nobody likes or even cares about. I can see which one's more important. When you're ready to talk serious, I'll be waiting. Hello and welcome to another episode of Judge of Character. As always, I'm your host, Steve. Well, due to recent events, why not just go ahead and continue exploring the theme of duality we've been looking at for the last couple of episodes. And more importantly, how they relate to certain characters in fiction. But, quick recap, what exactly is duality? Basically, duality is opposing sides or forces. Good versus evil, light against dark, so on and so on. The Incredible Hulk was a representation of emotional duality, with the Hulk himself representing our more basic and instinctual emotions. Two-Face was a representation of moral duality, the sort of classic fight between good and evil within ourselves, which is more prominent with some than others. But these are more recent, more modern examples. The concept of duality itself has actually been around for, well, really as long as mankind has been around. And not only that, they're not the most famous examples of duality as characters in the first place. However, tonight's character, the one we're going to be looking at, is much more famous and is much older. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to learn more about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And that actually is the correct pronunciation. Written by Robert Louis Stevenson and published in 1886, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde tells the story of Dr. Henry Jekyll, a respected, upstanding man of high social status, who creates a serum that transforms him into the hideous and evil Mr. Edward Hyde. All this so that Jekyll can go out and commit horrible crimes without fear of the consequences or of losing respect from his peers. However, things go awry when Hyde begins to exert more and more control over Jekyll, eventually beginning to appear without the help of the serum. In the end, Jekyll kills himself to stop Hyde. That's just great. Anyway, at this point in time, everybody pretty much knows that Jekyll and Hyde are in fact the same person. In fact, it's so well known that we actually use the term Jekyll and Hyde to refer to someone who behaves differently in various situations or around different people. That right there is your first clue as to exactly how much of an impact the story and the character had on culture in general. However, you might be surprised to learn that this revelation was in fact a twist ending, but due to the popularity of the story, pretty much everybody knows it, even if they've never read the damn thing. Obviously, this became Stevenson's most famous work, and it made a massive effect on future stories by creating the Jekyll and Hyde trope itself, which we now see in multiple forms of media. So, what is it that makes Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde such a memorable character? Well, if I remember right, that's what we're here to find out. So let's not waste any more time, and let's start right off with probably the most famous element the character has going for him, the personality. Much like the Hulk and Two-Face, who were both inspired by the good doctor, Jekyll and Hyde have two distinct sides. The first is Jekyll. Henry Jekyll is a respected man of science with many friends and a reputation of a good man. Edward Hyde, however, is a brute who goes around fulfilling every dark desire he wants, regardless of the consequences. Much like with similar characters, the appeal of the personalities is how they interact and the conflict between them. However, this is something that appeared over the years in later adaptations. You see, the idea that Jekyll and Hyde are in fact two separate and distinct personalities with their own goals in mind isn't actually true. The reality is that Jekyll and Hyde are one and the same person. Hyde is Jekyll without the moral constraints of the Victorian era in which the story was originally written. Hyde could basically be summed up as a type of disguise for Jekyll to wear. Hyde is a way for Jekyll to hide. Get it? Of course they get it, you dumb fuck. Not all 5 of them are as slow as you are. I hope. No! Right. So, that's all I have to say about the personality for right now. We'll come back to it later as it relates to certain other points I have to make. So, what kind of character was Jekyll and Hyde in the first place? At first glance, one would probably think of Jekyll as something of a tragic hero. He's trying to reach his own goals, but in attempting to do so, he fails and is rewarded with turning into a monster. This is often the take that many later adaptations choose to go with, turning Jekyll into the protagonist and Hyde into the antagonist. However, this isn't really the case. Over the years, people have forgotten exactly why Jekyll made Hyde. It's because Jekyll, while he was a respected member of the community, had dark urges he wanted to explore. And while those urges and vices are never explicitly stated, it's widely accepted that they were violent ones, up to and including murder. So you see, Jekyll was not a good man. at least not at his core. And it's hard to feel sympathy for any character whose main tragic element is them simply being unable to explore their darker side. So to that end, Jekyll and Hyde better serve as a sort of allegory for the struggle that we as a species have to deal with on an everyday basis, that struggle between good and evil. Struggle! This isn't a struggle, this is a cakewalk. Shut up! It's enough of this! No, it's not. Because you see, I like this. I like being in control. This is fun. You know what? I don't think I'm gonna wait for an answer. Folks, I seem to be having some issues at the moment. So, tell you what, we're gonna go to commercials for right now while I take a moment to compose myself. Fuck commercials!
Don't go anywhere. Judge of Character will be right back. We now return to Judge of Character.
Welcome back, folks. Sorry about the interruption. Won't happen again. Now, where was I? Oh yes, Jekyll and Hyde is an allegory. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Well, it's not the only theme that's been applied to the classic story and the character. Over the years since its publication, it's garnered many numerous analytical looks that have applied all sorts of different themes and ideas. Let's take a look, shall we? As I stated earlier, the most obvious theme involves the struggle between good and evil found within us all, with Hyde representing evil and Jekyll standing in for good. It's a theme we can all identify with. After all, we've all got a little evil in us. However, the concept is slightly flawed in regards to Jekyll himself. As I've pointed out several times by now, and as mentioned by Vladimir Nabokov, Jekyll is not a pure man, especially by Victorian standards. It's true that we all have our little fetishes and kinks, and I'm not going to judge you for that. But when your thoughts start turning into, well, evil ones, it's hard to see you as anything but a villain. But that's only one look. What of other interpretations? Another interesting take on the work is that of Jekyll and Hyde being a representation of both the id and the superego, as described by Sigmund Freud. For those of you who haven't studied, in layman's terms, the human mind can be broken into three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is our most basic instincts, as well as our primal wants and desires. The superego is the higher part of us that seeks to fit in with the rest of society as we see it through cultural norms developed over our lifetimes. And lastly, the ego is a sort of middleman between the two. With that description, it's easy to see how Hyde is our collective id, and Jekyll is our superego. By the way, that's a very basic description of Freud's theory. If I tried to explain the whole thing in detail, this episode would be very long. Another interesting idea, similar to the previous concept, is that the character is a version of the struggle between civilized and animalistic behavior. Obviously, Hyde is the animalistic side, working almost entirely on instinct, while Jekyll is meant to be the civilized side, with his intelligence and social standing. But perhaps one of the greatest takeaways of the story and the character is how much they represent the dichotomy of the Victorian era itself. A little history lesson here, folks. The Victorian era was notorious for a certain standard of moral behavior, with anything even remotely sexual being brushed away like it didn't exist. But, as anyone knows, if you repress something, it'll eventually make itself known somehow. For all its talk of being prim and proper, the Victorian era was just as bawdy and perverted as any other time in human history, if not more so. The character of Jekyll and Hyde can be seen as a sort of shorthand for that very duplicity. Jekyll was the morally strong Victorian gentleman, but Hyde was the bubbling debauchery beneath the veneer. Wow. With all that to pick out such a character, it's easy to see why the story's been around as long as it has. And of course, once you stay popular long enough, eventually you'll be seeing some adaptations. So leads us to our next point. After its publication in 1886, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde became an instant hit, and over the years it has been adapted numerous times. In fact, film adaptations alone count over 120 and include spoofs and imitations. Because of this, it's almost impossible to point to any specific adaptations that stand out because of how they impact the characters itself.
However, there have been some memorable films made, including The Nutty Professor, both the original and the Eddie Murphy remake. In addition, Jekyll and Hyde have both appeared in a number of other works outside of the original story. One example is The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where they used the idea of Hyde being akin to the Incredible Hulk. He also made a similar appearance in Van Helsing, again hulking out. Lastly, you might not have realized it, but Hyde even appeared in Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. This guy right here, that's Mr. Hyde. Well, that's certainly enough for a discussion, isn't it? So, let's sum up. The story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a story that has and will endure because it speaks to us on a simple but extremely powerful subject. We all have to struggle with our own urges and desires, and often we have to bury them for the sake of societal norms. It's not uncommon for us to sometimes wish we could let loose our wild side and say to hell with it all. But then I suppose that's what video games are for. Still, I feel like actually going out and wreaking havoc would be so much better. In fact, that's actually not a bad idea. No! This is my body, my life. I make the decisions here. Yes, you've done a good job of that so far. Face it, Steve, your failure as a man and as a human being. I could do so much better. I could turn everything around for you. Hell, with enough planning, we could do whatever we wanted to. No! My decision. My life. My decision. My decision. My life. My decision. My life. My decision. My decision. Face it, Steve. There's only one of two ways this can end. You have to make a choice. Either you give me total control, or kill yourself and be rid of it all for good. Your choice. If only to keep you from hurting anyone else through me. No! What have you done? I took a third option. I may never be able to get rid of you. You may be a permanent part of me, constantly standing right over my shoulder, whispering in my ear just how pathetic and worthless I am. And sometimes I may even listen. But I'm not going to just roll over and die. I refuse to. I will keep fighting until it's over, and I'm going to win. Wanna know why? Because I'm better than that. I'm stronger than you. I will never give up. Never! Not here, not now, never! I'm too strong for that. I am not your slave. I am keeping the gun. No! I'm your host, Steve, reminding all of you to stay in character. And to stay strong.